A Tennessee mom of two goes on a run but never returns home. Years after her body was discovered, the man accused of kidnapping and murdering her is sentenced for the horrific crime. Cleotha Abston was slated to go on trial in February of 2025 for Eliza Fletcher's brutal murder, but instead avoided trial and the death penalty by pleading guilty to multiple charges, including first-degree murder and aggravated kidnapping. According to Abston's lawyer, Junie Ganguly, he advised his client to take the deal due to overwhelming evidence against him and believed a Tennessee jury would have sentenced him to death. But Abston's actions left Eliza's family without a daughter, her husband without a wife, and her children without a mother. During his sentencing, Shelby County District Attorney Steve Mulroy, on behalf of Eliza's family, read a statement saying, quote, "We have no idea what happened to you to turn into someone so filled with the desire to hurt people. Whatever it was does not excuse or explain what you have done. You have changed our lives forever, and nothing will ever be the same. You murdered Liza, even though she did nothing to deserve it. She did not hurt you. In fact, she would have been the first to help you if you needed it," end quote. Abston was arrested a day after he kidnapped and murdered Eliza on September 2nd of 2022. The kindergarten teacher was jogging near the University of Memphis campus early that morning before being chased by a man that was later identified as Abston. Investigators received surveillance footage showing Abston forcing Eliza into the passenger seat of a black SUV, where he remained parked for minutes before driving away. Investigators then uncovered more clues that would point to Abston. According to the arrest affidavit, a cyclist discovered Eliza's phone and a pair of sandals in the street, which were turned over to investigators. Investigators later matched the DNA of the sandals to Abston, who also used the name Cleotha Henderson. He reportedly tried to flee, but was ultimately taken into custody after his black GMC Terrain was found in the parking lot by his home.
We then went about finding the suspect vehicle in question, as well as the suspect himself. He was spotted, the vehicle was spotted in the apartment complex, and we also conducted surveillance on him. And then when he tried to make a move, we went in and made the arrest safely, and took him into custody and turned him over to the custody of the Memphis Police Department.
But then a massive police search began to search for Eliza as Abston kept tight-lipped on her location. Police spent days searching for the missing mom until they made the horrific discovery. Her body was discovered in the woods near a vacant duplex, and purple running shorts similar to the one Eliza was wearing were found in a discarded trash bag near the duplex. Eliza's autopsy would reveal more insight into her gruesome death. She had a gunshot wound in the back of her head and blunt force injuries to her right leg and jaw fractures. Abston faced several charges, including first-degree murder, kidnapping, aggravated kidnapping, and tampering with or fabricating evidence, all of which he ultimately pleaded guilty to. And this was not his first run-in with the law. He had previously served 20 years in prison for kidnapping a Memphis attorney back in 2000, and he was even sentenced to 80 years in prison this year in a 2021 rape case. But he was not charged in that rape case until after being charged with Eliza's murder. According to authorities, he wasn't arrested on the rape charge before Eliza's death because evidence from a sexual assault kit test had not been available at that time. Following Eliza's death, the legislature passed a new law requiring the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation to issue a quarterly report on sexual assault kit testing times. Cleotha Abston now has no chance of ever getting out of prison, but for Eliza's family, their lives will forever be changed. As Eliza's family continues to mourn her loss, they also reflect on the beautiful person she truly was. In a statement, the family wrote, quote, "We miss the bright light of Liza's life every day. Liza meant so much to so many, and her smile radiated happiness, energy, and comfort. Her husband, her children, her parents, her brother, the rest of her family, her friends, her students, her school families, her fellow teachers, her church community, and so many others were moved by countless examples of her faith, kindness, and compassion. No legal resolution and no sentence can diminish the anguish of Liza's murder. We accept the outcome that her murderer has pled guilty to all charges, will wake up in prison for the rest of his life, and cannot harm anyone else," end quote. District Attorney Steve Mulroy released a statement following Abston's sentencing, writing, quote, "I want us today to acknowledge and celebrate the life of Eliza Fletcher, a beloved daughter, wife, mother, and teacher who was tragically kidnapped and murdered in a senseless act of random preparatory violence." And Mulroy's statement highlighted a potential silver lining for Eliza's family, as Abston gave up his right to appeal under the plea deal. Let's break this down further with the very man whose office was set to prosecute Cleotha Abston, and that's Shelby County District Attorney Steve Mulroy. Thank you so much for joining me today. Steve, this case made headlines across the nation, and now it has come to kind of a conclusion. Talk to me a little bit about how your office ended up reaching this plea deal, and did it have the support of Eliza Fletcher's family?
Right. Well, glad to be here. We've been talking with defense counsel for a number of weeks about this particular arrangement. And yes, the family of Liza Fletcher is fully in support of this. I think it accomplishes a couple of things. For the family, it provides finality. They will not have to keep reliving this case for the years and decades of appeals of a death penalty case. When you do a plea deal, you waive your right to an appeal. But I think on a broader level, it achieves public safety goals because this dangerous person will never get out of jail. This is a life without parole sentence. So this person will die in prison.
And how strong was the evidence against Cleotha Abston?
Oh, it was very strong indeed. We had all types of forensic evidence tying him to the crime. There really was no doubt in our minds that we would have the ability to prove every element of the charges of murder and kidnapping beyond a reasonable doubt.
And did Abston give your office any indication as to why he did this?
No, no, and he was relatively mute and expressionless at the hearing the other day. I don't know what motivated him to do this. It really was a senseless, random act of predatory violence.
And if you can, kind of take me back to 2022 when your office first learned of the case. I can imagine many people were terrified by this crime, and it can really be a jogger and woman's worst nightmare. You're running by yourself, probably on the route you usually take, and then you're snatched up and killed by a random man. Talk to me a little bit about what it was like kind of taking on this case and what kind of the mood it set for the Shelby County area.
Well, this was my first week on the job as a newly elected district attorney. In fact, it was my second day on the job when the crime occurred. And that first weekend, I met with the family while we were still hoping and praying that we might find Liza Fletcher alive. And the public reaction was immediate and unprecedented. There was an outpouring of concern, as you pointed out, about the fact that someone was just jogging and apparently some random stranger did this, but also because Liza Fletcher was a beloved member of the community. As a teacher, she had touched so many lives, and there was a real outpouring of concern. Several days later, there was a 4 a.m. vigil run reenacting her route to sort of take back the streets and show that, we're not going to give in to fear. And that has occurred on the anniversary every year since. I think what the public needs to know is they deserve to feel safe jogging, running anywhere, any part of town, any time of day or night.
Yeah, and earlier this year, I even spoke with Chief Prosecutor Paul Hagerman, who told me your office has been in constant communication with Liza's family. How are they doing, and how are they kind of healing throughout all of this tragedy for their family?
They are doing surprisingly well under the circumstances based on my contacts with various members of the family, including the other day in court. Remarkably resilient and strong. And when they made their written statement in court, which I read to the judge and the court, really showing extraordinary grace, even compassion for the defendant, along with a desire to see that he pay for his crime.
Yeah, and that statement was just very beautiful, and like you had mentioned as well too, they did show mercy. Is that something that you normally see in the prosecutor's office, a family kind of showing a little bit of leniency, and I say that very lightly, toward the killer of their beloved family member?
It's not the norm. I have seen it in other cases. You would be surprised how often that kind of sentiment gets expressed, but it's not at all the norm. And I think this particular case certainly was an outlier in that regard.
And just going back to the family, Eliza was a mother of two very young children. If you can speak on that, how are her children doing right now?
I don't know specifically how the children are doing. I have not been in touch with them. They obviously haven't come to any of the court hearings or any of the meetings in our office. But My overall sense from my contact with family members, what they have said, and what Paul Hagerman from my office has also said is that the family as a whole is doing as well as can be expected under the circumstances. We're 2 years in, and I think they definitely want to move on with their lives. And I believe that this plea arrangement, this sentence of life without parole, providing that finality, will aid them in doing that.
All right. Well, Steve, I really appreciate your insight into this case, and our heart still goes out to Liza's family right now. Before we sign you off, though, is there anything else you would like to add just overall about this case?
This case sparked an extraordinary outcry of public concern because of how beloved Liza was in the community and for many other reasons, and it got national and even international attention. But every case is important. We handle, unfortunately, other murders and kidnappings on a regular basis. Each one of them is important, and we're just going to try to do what we can to vigorously prosecute them to, assure the best outcome we can for public safety and here in Memphis and Shelby County.
All right, Steve, I appreciate your time so much, and thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you.
Cleotha Abston was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.